When a player wins MVP, the real test begins when the playoffs start. How far can the MVP of the league carry his team? In this video, I want to take a look at some NBA superstars who won the MVP, but then they faltered in the playoffs right after. They had an unspectacular postseason that did not end the way they hoped for. Some of them severely underperformed, to the point where we questioned their MVP status. Let's talk about all of that. Anyway, how's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and without further ado, let's get started. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 2020. Fresh off his second MVP and leading the Bucks to the best record in the entire league, this was time for Giannis and the Bucks to win the championship. People anticipated a finals matchup between the Bucks and Lakers, a showcase of the old guard versus the new, the crown that was supposed to be passed from LeBron to Giannis. However, nobody expected the Bucks to get knocked out so soon. In the second round of the playoffs, the 5th-seeded Miami Heat shocked the world by defeating them. It wasn't a normal defeat either, they won in a convincing 5 games. Now, I am aware that Giannis did have some ankle problems that popped up after Game 3, but they had already lost the first 2 games. At that point, with the way the Bucks were playing, they would have lost the series anyway, with or without Giannis. The Heat defense suffocated him, collapsing into the paint every time he got close to the basket. In that series, he finished with averages of 21, 11, and 5, which still seem like decent numbers, but that's a severe drop-off from his regular season stats. Efficiency-wise as well, he was not his usual self. It was especially a large drop-off from his previous series against the Orlando Magic, where he dominated with over 30 points a game. It was such a huge upset. Prior to the playoffs, according to 538.com's playoff odds, the Bucks had an 84% chance to reach the conference finals. The Heat, only an 8% chance. Also, during the regular season, Giannis set the NBA record for highest PER in history with 31.9, surpassing Wilt Chamberlain, who previously held that record, with 31.8. Funny enough, Giannis would surpass his own record 2 seasons later. So that season, it was one of the greatest seasons of all time that ended in a major disappointment. Of course, Giannis and the Bucks got their revenge a year later. Wilt Chamberlain, 1966. While Wilt Chamberlain was always noticed for his gaudy stats, one thing that people don't talk about much is he had many playoff runs where he severely underperformed. I mean, he was never terrible, because he's Wilt, he's gonna get his numbers. But compared to his regular season dominance, he looked vulnerable in the playoffs. Chamberlain's 1965-66 season saw him score over 33 a game. But in the playoffs, that dipped. To give some context, the Sixers had the best record in the league, so they were given a bye in the first round. As a result, they were immediately in the Eastern Division Finals, where they matched up against the Boston Celtics, the team that's given him trouble for his entire career. This time though, it was supposed to be different. Wilt won MVP for the first time in 6 years. And now, with an actual supporting cast, playing alongside All-Stars Hal Greer and Chet Walker, Wilt was ready to carry the Sixers to the title. And it did not happen. In 5 games, the Sixers got demolished. In the first 2 games, the Sixers won by an average of 20 points. It was a quick exit filled with heartbreak. However, just like Giannis, Wilt got his revenge a year later, overcoming the Celtics and leading the Sixers to the championship, the first one of his career. Steph Curry, 2016. The good old 2016 Warriors. Curry himself had arguably the most dominant offensive season ever. In terms of volume and efficiency, he was out of this world. But in the playoffs, his numbers across the board dipped drastically. Not only that, but the team as a whole looked so shaky. To give him credit, he was playing through a knee sprain, but a lot of it had to do with how opposing teams defended him too. Against OKC, the Warriors got pushed to 7 games, and Curry had trouble getting open looks all series long. The Thunder made him work his tail off just to get open. The defense ramped up even further when they played the Cavs. Their plan was to be as physical as possible to throw him off balance, and it worked. Curry had his worst series of this playoff run, and probably the worst of his career. It was a tumultuous ending to a historic season, and by not winning the title, this team cannot be considered the greatest of all time. David Robinson, 1995. This clip looks all too familiar, right? Well, at this time, the NBA announced the winner of the MVP award prior to the start of the conference finals. In that coronation, Stern handed the trophy to David Robinson, with Hakeem Olajuwon, the league's previous MVP, watching from a distance. Big mistake. Right from the start, Hakeem felt like he had something to prove. He absolutely trounced Robinson, abused him in what was supposed to be a matchup between two giants. Robinson could not do anything. Here's a comparison of their stat lines. It wasn't just this series. Overall, Robinson struggled to score in the playoffs. His field goal percentage dipped by nearly 10% compared to his otherwise phenomenal season. According to Kenny Smith, right after the Rockets won the series, Hakeem said, "I'm going to David Robinson's house to get my MVP." This wasn't the first time Robinson struggled in the playoffs either. The year before this, he capped off an incredible season, clinching the scoring title by dropping 71 points in the final game of the season. But then, when the playoffs started, he got embarrassed by the Utah Jazz, as the Spurs got bounced in the first round. Apart from a few playoff series early in his career, Robinson, overall during his prime, he has a history of underperforming when it matters most. Karl Malone, 1997 and 1999. Speaking of underperforming when it matters most, Karl Malone might be the poster boy for that. We all know Malone's an all-time great. For decades, he held the honor of scoring the second most points in NBA history, until LeBron surpassed him. He was consistent, he was reliable, he was durable, at least during the regular season. But when the playoffs always came around, the pressure got to his head. In fact, Malone is one of just a handful of NBA players who made the playoffs in every single season of his career. That's super impressive by itself. And by 1997, he won his first ever MVP. However, there was such a stark difference in his regular season performance versus playoff performance. Malone's efficiency plummeted, and he had some awful games. This included a game where he shot 2 for 20 against the Lakers. In the finals, while MJ was tearing it up, Malone shied away from the spotlight. He averaged about 24 a game, but it was a hard 24. He struggled to hit his shots, and he even struggled to hit free throws. Malone's free throw percentage plummeted to 60%, and he missed so many in the fourth quarters. This wasn't the last time he choked against the Bulls either. The year after, Malone choked again, getting the ball stripped, which led to MJ's iconic game-winning shot. Fast forward to 1999, and he won his second and final MVP. But it was a pretty lackluster season for an MVP. So this was the lockout year, and the Jazz tied for the best record in the league, so they gave it to him. And once again, his game severely regressed in the playoffs. His percentages plummeted as usual, and the Jazz struggled to even get past the first round, before losing in the second. For his career, Malone's playoff true shooting percentage is over 5 percentage points lower than his regular season efficiency. That's actually kinda ridiculous. I looked it up, and it's the biggest difference of any superstar in history, especially considering he's like a top 20 player of all time. Dirk Nowitzki, 2007. We all know it, we all remember it. The 2007 Mavs were arguably the most disappointing team in modern NBA history. 67 wins, just coming off an appearance in the finals the previous year. Dirk registered a 50-40-90 season, the first of his career. They were the clear favorites to win the title, but in the first round, they met a team that gave them trouble all season long. The Mavs and Warriors faced off 3 times in the regular season, with the Warriors winning all 3 of those games. However, that's just the regular season, right? We see it all the time that great teams struggle against certain playstyles, but they usually fix it by the time the playoffs start. That wasn't the case here. Don Nelson's high-paced small ball game plan was the Mavs' Achilles heel. That season, the Mavs were the 3rd slowest team in the NBA in terms of pace. The Warriors were the fastest, first in pace. Nelson, being a former coach of the Mavs, he knew what Dirk's weaknesses were. He's always had trouble dealing with smaller defenders with quick hands. They always gave him problems. So he would put guys like Steven Jackson, Matt Barnes, Al Harrington, and Michael Petrus on him, lengthy small forwards who really bothered Dirk. On offense, their plan was to outrun them, as they knew the slower, sluggish Mavs could not keep up. As a result, this was the worst playoff series of Dirk's prime. He averaged fewer than 20 points a game and shot the worst he's ever shot. To cap it off, in Game 6, the elimination game, he scored a whopping 8 points on 2 of 13 shooting, as the Mavs lost by 25. There's a reason why, prior to Dirk's 2011 playoff run, he was considered to be a choker, a guy who folded under the spotlight. It took him years to get over this, and it took years for the Mavs to become contenders once again. But it all worked out in the end. Anyway, that's all folks. That was a list of MVPs who greatly underperformed in the playoffs the same year they won it. Let me know your thoughts if you can think of any others that should have been on here. Which one of these guys do you think underperformed the most compared to their regular season? Thank you all so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and of course, as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.